My name is Elena Martínez. I am professor in the Herbert Wertheim School of Public Health and Human Longevity Science. I am also a faculty at the UC San Diego Moores Cancer Center. My background is probably not unlike many others immigrants to this country. I was born in a small town that is not so small anymore in Mexico. It's the name of the town is Venado, which oddly enough, it stands for deer. And it's in the state of San Luis Potosí. Not a very common area that people know. It's not a touristy area. That is where I was born. I came to the United States in the late 60s as a pre-adolescent. And I came here with my family. My father had been here in the United States for several years before he brought us over. He was a migrant worker. He worked here in the state of California as well as in Arizona before settling in Chicago, Illinois, of all places, a very cold place. So he decided at some point that he wanted to bring his family. By then, there were 4 of us. So we came here to the United States and settled in Chicago. So as a pre-adolescent, I was brought to Chicago to start my new journey and my new life in the United States. When we got to Chicago, obviously my father brought us to the United States for a better life, and education is key in making that life better for his family. He didn't have the privilege, he or my mom didn't have the privilege of having those opportunities in Mexico. My father was did not graduate from grammar school. My mother did graduate from grammar school. And so they didn't have those opportunities. And obviously, my father coming to the United States saw that this would be a better opportunity for us to get an education. So education was always ingrained in us. And even though it wasn't said all the time, it was pretty much implied that we were here in this country to take advantage of opportunities that this amazing country has to offer. So education was always at the core. He made sure that we went to, at least better schools. I started out in a public school because it was down the street from our house and I could walk to it, but I wasn't doing well, not that I wasn't doing well grade-wise, but it was just that immersion was very difficult and challenging. And I recall my mom and my dad saying that there were days where I would come home crying because I didn't know the language, I didn't know anything, I didn't know the culture. It was so, so different. And my father, I guess in his wisdom, decided that he would take me out of public school and put me in Catholic school. I still don't know exactly why that decision came about, but he thought that maybe that would be a better environment for me. The Catholic school was a better environment because it was smaller class size, and somehow, maybe by then I had grown a little more and did much better in Catholic school and finished Catholic school, grade school, and then I also ended up going to Catholic school in high school. The tradition of Catholic school continued. My high school was probably not a common place that most students would, identify with because it was very, very small. My graduating class was, I think, 25 or something like that. So it was very small. It was an all-girls school also. And so that helped in terms of creating like a small family. It did become a small family. And the college application process was facilitated by a counselor. So we had a single counselor for the whole school. It wasn't that big. And so the college application came about through my counselor at the high school sitting all of us down, sitting me down and asking me if I would be interested in going to college. And this was so foreign to me, although I knew that I would want to at least attempt to get into college, but it was so foreign because I was the only one in my family that I could think of who was actually applying to college. So I remember that she facilitated this. And one thing that now seems kind of funny, but it's, it wasn't so funny at the time, but maybe other students still experience this, is that in order to apply to college, you have to apply for financial aid, right? And so I talked to my dad about his tax documents, and finances don't get discussed in many of our families. Like, I never knew how much my dad made, and he was very proud of that. He didn't share that. And so he couldn't understand why, to get into college, he would have to share such private information, right? And I remember him struggling with the fact that he would need to share this information. And at one point, he was thinking, no, I'm not going to share that. And I'm like, well, I can't get into college. I can't apply. And obviously, he didn't know. Nobody else knew, and he was questioning it. He did provide that information, obviously, and then we learned that it was for a good thing. It was a good reason for doing that. I was able to get scholarships because he was the only wage earner in the house, and I was the oldest of 6 by then. So obviously, he didn't make a lot of money. It was very helpful, and that was a lesson that I think was very helpful for my father, my proud father, to learn. I know they were proud, but they are not from this. We are not from a family where you share a lot of your feelings, right? You keep them kind of quiet. It's like this quiet pride that you have. But you would hear my dad sharing that story with others. And again, because I was the first one of my generation, there was pride. There was also anxiety and fear, like, what does this mean? Because the application process meant applying to colleges where I would not be living at home. And that was scary for them. And actually, I don't think I was allowed, I have to think about this, but I don't think I was allowed to leave home. It was kind of implied that I would need to live at home. Again, it's that immigrant, what's going to happen to my daughter? I've never experienced this. She should continue to live at home. We should continue to help her. So I think it was pretty much implied that I would live at home. I did get accepted to one college where I could, it was nearby, but I could stay at the dorm there. But I ended up going to the state college nearby and living at home. Overwhelming. Imagine coming from a graduating class of 25, going to a state college. I had nobody prepared me for that. Nobody. The very large classes that freshmen have to take, that you're in an auditorium of hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people, was overwhelming for me. Just completely overwhelming. There's some classes that I didn't do well, classes that were like that because I felt lost. I didn't know where to go for help. And so some of those classes at the beginning, I did not do well. I mean, not that I failed them, but I did not do as well as I could have because I was so completely lost. I remember economics became my most hated subject because I had no idea what I was doing in that class. I did my best, taking tests. I'm not a strong test taker, so the tests you take in those large classes were very, very challenging. But I learned how to balance that with the classes that I am good in that were smaller classes where I got some one-on-one help through the counseling office. So I've always been strong in math. So math and other math, like I did really well in chemistry, and so some of the sciences I did really well. So I kind of balanced my grade point average, the balance between those large classes where I wasn't doing as well with the smaller classes that I was really doing well with. In terms of pursuing a career, no, I did not know what I wanted to do. Once I got into college, I had an interest in nutrition, for example, so I pursued a nutrition degree from the beginning. That was something, but I never explored anything else. It's not like I was an informed student. I wasn't. It's just like with my counselor, okay, nutrition. All right, nutrition sounds good. And so I just pursued that and kept going. I never explored anything else. Not bad or good, but that's, I set my mind up to something and I pursue it. So after I got my bachelor's degree, that was in Chicago, I started working. And then life happens, but I ended up moving to Houston, Texas. I was married by then and had one child, and moved to Houston, Texas, and was working at a hospital as a dietitian. And my life in terms of pursuing careers has been about opportunities that have been provided to me. I am so incredibly lucky and fortunate to have had people see something in me that I didn't see in myself, and they gave me opportunities, and I took them, not always knowing how challenging those opportunities would be, but I took them. So it's always been like that. I got a master's degree in public health because my boss at the time told me in order to accept the research nutritionist position, I had to go to school and get a master's degree. And I said, oh, that sounds like a good idea. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but I got a master's degree. Then after the master's degree, another advisor sat me down. He says, okay, so what? Now what? What are you going to do with the master's degree that you can't do right now? And I hadn't even thought of that. He said, I think you should take the summer off and enroll in the doctoral degree. And I said, really? He said, yes, you like science, I can tell. So again, other people seeing in you something that you don't see yourself and taking advantages of those opportunities. So that's how I started in the PhD program. And slowly, because I was working full-time, 2 kids, very, very challenging. Slowly but surely, I was able to finish the coursework and do a dissertation and receive a doctoral degree. My research trajectory has evolved over the years and decades now. I started out as what we call a straight traditional epidemiologist, where you study why diseases happen, how they happen, and things like that. I love the inquiry of it. I love the curiosity of learning why and how. That's what epidemiologists do. And so I started out in that type of career, where it's about discovery and answering questions, very focused in the area of cancer, so cancer prevention, cancer etiology, and develop a very, very sound foundation in epidemiology. But I'm a very, very curious person. I love to learn. I'm a lifelong learner, as the term goes, and I am an example of that. If there's a question, I go after the answer, and I go out of my way out of finding that answer. So I'm always a very, very curious person. So my career, you get to a point and you kind of feel like you've gotten to that next stage. So what is the next stage now? So my career evolved into exploring areas outside of traditional epidemiology. I've always, like I said, loved learning, so then I really launched into learning from other disciplines, like basic science. how does epidemiology contribute to understanding the biology of cancer? How does the biology of cancer fit in understanding the etiology of cancer? That's what we call team science. I mean, I think I was doing team science before even the term evolved because, again, I was given opportunities by my mentors. So the team science concept has always been something that I have pursued, that I teach about, that I mentor about. Later in my career, I became more and more involved in cancer disparities, cancer equity. People ask me, well, why didn't you pursue it early on? Well, it wasn't a funded field. It wasn't. There were no funding opportunities to pursue cancer disparities when I was growing up, when my career was coming up. Obviously now it's a huge field, thankfully. But back then it wasn't. I had to wait for those opportunities to come about so that my research could flourish. And now that's, probably 90% of my research involves equity and addressing disparities in underserved communities. In terms of challenges in my career and how I have overcome them, probably a personal challenge was that I wasn't a very assertive person. My culture, my background didn't teach me that, right? That advocate for yourself. I came across probably as insecure, and perhaps I was, because I didn't grow up in that environment, right? In my family and my upbringing did not teach me those skills. So coming out of my shell was a challenge. I would be the one sitting in the corner, not saying a whole heck of a lot, even though I had something to say. I was afraid to say it. I have anxiety if I was going to speak up, especially in front of highly esteemed people. I had to come out of that shell. But thankfully, I was surrounded by mentors and advisors that allowed me to come and really encouraged me to come out of that shell. Even going, probably the most intimidating instance that I can think of is I had an opportunity to apply for a postdoctoral fellowship at the Harvard School of Public Health. And I had to interview, so they invited me. I'd done job interviews, but not like that. And sitting in a room, there was maybe one other female, come to think of it, maybe there weren't any females. It was all white men, okay? I was shaking, probably people could tell when I had to present my dissertation work and, interview with people. But those people were the sweetest, most wonderful, caring, just laid back people. So it wasn't the environment that I thought I was going to experience. And they offered me the job and I took it. So again, it's that. And then that was, sort of like a gatekeeper coming in. That was my gate, coming in, saying, oh, okay, yeah, there is a world for me here. There is a place for me here. That was a really, really intimidating, scary experience that I overcame, and that helped me build confidence. And more experience like that came in my career, and I was able to overcome them, and that's how you get out of your shell, and then later on you figure out, if I don't speak up, who's going to speak up for me? Or I can't let somebody else speak up for me all the time. My childhood experience had a great influence in what I'm doing today. First of all, overcoming the shyness to build that confidence goes a long way. The persistence and the tenacity that you have to have to be able to get ahead in life has helped me in my career. Being the oldest of 6 obviously helped because a lot of responsibility is put on the oldest in our culture, in the Mexican culture. And so you develop those leadership skills early on that you didn't even think were leadership skills. I think back on those lessons. I also think that the culture that I grew up in my home and in my school, now have helped me open up doors in my career, because I now have colleagues in Mexico, various parts of Mexico, that I have research collaborations with. I'm able to go back and speak the language with them. The culture is obvious. You open your mouth and, oh, somebody else from our country, opening doors for us. And so those childhood experiences, that culture is evident right away when you collaborate with colleagues in Mexico and in other parts of Latin America. So I've been able to do work all throughout Latin America, but a lot also in Mexico as a result of my childhood experiences, the culture that I grew up in, and it has helped me tremendously. Serendipity, what does it mean to me? It's such an interesting word that I have heard others also talk about. To me, it's about doors that open for you where you least expect them. Walking through those doors and not being afraid to walk through those doors. That is what serendipity is, because it's not something that you necessarily plan for, right? At all. It's there are those people that have their lives, that set up their lives and their career trajectory. I admire those people. I really do. But not all of us grew up in that kind of environment that even know how to plan that, right? Because we don't have role models, because we don't have someone who's helping us make those plans. Some of us don't have that, so we have to take advantage of what opportunities are put in front of us by others, by institutions, by people. But it means not being afraid to either knock on the door or walk through the door that someone else opens for you, and not look back and not be afraid. That's what serendipity means to me. The one thing that would be that is amazing about the future for you, for our future students, our future generation, is thinking about you being part of the solution to addressing inequity, to addressing disparities, no matter what career trajectory you take. What do I mean by that? Some of you may not even have any idea of what it is you want to do. Education is the key, first of all. And I tell students, my mentees, undergraduate, high school students, you can be part of the solution simply by getting an education, because doors are going to open for you. If we don't educate the next generation, who's going to replace me? And nowadays, I tell people, I don't want to be replaced by just one person. I want to be replaced by 100, by 1,000 people like me who look like me, so that others can look up to you. I never thought of myself as, somebody else in the future is going to look to me and be inspired by me. Never thought of myself that way, but students do tell me that. Undergraduate students, graduate students, even junior faculty who come and apply here, they see a leader that looks like them, and that makes a huge, huge difference. How are we going to build that without you, without the next generation? I say it again, I want to be replaced by 1,000 people that look like me, because that's how we are going to address the inequity and the disparities and just become a more inclusive community.